The ballroom was a sea of jewels and silk, exactly as the book described. I stood there, trapped in the body of Ashley Von Brandt, the story's designated bitch, and felt a grin spread across my face. Not hers, mine. This was it, the opening scene, my moment to derail the entire tragedy before it even started. Across the room, Eleanor, the doe-eyed heroine, was making her grand entrance. In the novel, this is where I was supposed to make a snide comment about her dress being a hand-me-down from a country seamstress, loud enough for everyone to hear. It was the first little push that sent her stumbling toward the male lead, Blake Sterling, for comfort. Not on my watch. Eleanor curtsied, her cheeks flushed with a mix of excitement and nerves. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and smiled. It felt foreign on this face, like stretching a muscle that had atrophied. "Eleanor, darling," I said, my voice smooth as cream. "That gown is simply divine. The color brings out the light in your eyes." A ripple went through the nearby crowd. Eleanor's jaw practically hit the floor. She stared at me, blinking, completely speechless. I just gave her a gentle, conspiratorial wink. From the corner of my eye, I saw Blake Sterling, the stoic Duke, raise a single, intrigued eyebrow. A small, secret smile touched my lips as I turned away. Piece of cake. All it took was a little kindness. One down, 100 more to go. I was in control. I spent the next hour mingling, playing the part of a charming, if slightly aloof, noblewoman. It was working. People who were supposed to scowl at me were offering me champagne. Blake even nodded at me from across the room. I felt a surge of power. I was the one with the cheat codes. This world was my oyster. I was chatting with some old countess about, I don't know, fox hunting, when it happened. It was small, almost unnoticeable. The weather lately has been simply perfect for a hunt, wouldn't you agree?" she said, fanning herself delicately. I nodded. "Absolutely. The grounds must be—" She stopped mid-sentence. Her fan froze. Her eyes, a pale, watery blue, unfocused for just a second, staring at a point over my shoulder. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, her focus snapped back to me. Her fan resumed its gentle rhythm. The weather lately has been simply perfect for a hunt, wouldn't you agree?" she said, again. Same words, same polite tilt of her head, same everything. I frowned. You just said that?" The Countess just gave me a vacant smile. "Did I, dear? Oh, my memory isn't what it used to be." Okay, weird. A little brain fart, maybe. She was old. I brushed it off and excused myself, my good mood only slightly dented. I needed some air. The balcony seemed like the perfect escape. And, wouldn't you know it, Blake Sterling was standing right there, looking at the moon. The script was back on track, but now I could improvise. "A lovely evening, Your Grace," I said, leaning against the railing beside him. He turned, and his gaze was intense. Not the cold, dismissive look from the book, but something softer. My heart did a little flutter. This was it. This was the new route. I was winning him over without any of the drama. People can change, Your Grace. Perhaps what you've seen before wasn't the real me. Perhaps not, he murmured, his eyes scanning my face. I find myself wanting to know the real you. I was about to reply, my mind racing with all the right things to say, when his expression went blank. It was like a light went out behind his eyes. He blinked slowly, then looked at me as if he'd only just noticed I was there.
A polite, distant smile appeared on his lips. "Your gown is exquisite, Lady Ashley," he said, his voice flat, robotic. "It complements the color of your eyes." My blood ran cold. I swear the temperature on the balcony dropped 20 degrees. Those were his first words to me in the novel. The exact words, the ones he was supposed to say before our intimate little chat. A chat that, apparently, had just been wiped from existence. We were just talking," I stammered, my throat suddenly tight. "You said—" Blake just stared at me, his head tilted in polite confusion. "My apologies, my lady. I believe this is the first we've spoken all evening." I backed away, a strangled noise caught in my throat. I need some air. It was a stupid thing to say. We were already outside."
I turned and practically fled, ignoring his confused stare. I found the ladies' retiring room, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the knob. The room was empty, thankfully. All gold leaf and plush velvet chairs. I stumbled toward the massive, ornate mirror hanging on the wall, my reflection staring back at me with wide, panicked eyes. "Okay, Ashley, get a grip," I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. "It's a bug, a glitch in the matrix. This world isn't perfect, that's all." I took a deep breath and smoothed my hair back from my forehead. I watched my hand in the mirror. My hand went up. A beat later, her hand went up. I froze. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered my hand. One agonizing second passed. The reflection's hand lowered. It wasn't a reflection. It was a copycat, a bad one with a delay. A cold sweat broke out across my skin. My stomach churned. "This isn't a bug," a voice in my head screamed. "Something is fundamentally wrong. The world isn't just imperfect, it's lagging. Or I'm lagging behind it." I stumbled backward, away from the mirror, my heel catching on the thick rug. I lost my balance and crashed onto the floor, my silks pooling around me. My breath came in ragged gasps. From the ground, I looked back up at the mirror, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My reflection was still standing there. It hadn't fallen. It just stood, perfectly still, watching me sprawled on the floor. Its expression was placid, its eyes empty. And then, very slowly, its lips curved upward into a smile. A wide, knowing smile that wasn't my own. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Away from that thing. I burst out of the retiring room, through a side door, and into the cool night air of the gardens. The manicured hedges and rose bushes felt like the walls of a maze closing in. I had to calm down. I had to think. It was stress, the shock of being pulled into a book. That's all it was. It had to be. I saw a gardener up ahead, trimming a large rose bush under the moonlight. The rhythmic snip-snip of his shears was strangely comforting, a piece of normalcy. I walked closer, trying to even out my breathing. As I got nearer, I saw what he was doing. Snip. A perfect red rose fell to the ground. He moved his shears back to the exact same spot on the stem. Snip. He cut the same already cut stem. Nothing fell. He moved his shears back. Snip. 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 It was a loop, a broken animation. My stomach heaved. I spun around, my resolve crumbling into dust, and started walking quickly in the other direction. Don't look at it. Just ignore it. Focus on the mission. Focus on Blake. That was the anchor. He was the key. I found him by the ornamental lake, just as the book said he would be. He was skipping stones across the water.
He turned as I approached, and a genuine smile lit up his face. "There you are. I was looking for you." Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees buckle. Okay, he was normal. The balcony incident was a fluke. Everything was fine. "I just needed a moment," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I walked to his side, my eyes drawn to the lake. The moon was high and bright, the stars were out, but the water wasn't reflecting any of it. It wasn't reflecting the moon, the trees, or the two of us standing right at its edge. It was just a flat, black, motionless sheet of polished obsidian. It was like a hole in the world. I didn't say a word. I just turned and ran. Back toward the manor, back toward the suffocating ballroom, back toward anything that felt solid. The feeling of being watched, not by people, but by the story itself, was a physical weight on my shoulders. I slammed the door to my assigned bedroom, leaning against it, gasping for air. My chest ached. I looked around the opulent room. The four-poster bed, the mahogany vanity, the silk curtains. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. My eyes darted around. There wasn't a single speck of dust dancing in the moonlight streaming through the window. Not one wrinkle on the bedspread, except for the one I'd just made by throwing my shawl on it. The books on the shelf were perfectly aligned, their spines untouched. It didn't look like a room someone lived in. It looked like a room that had just been set up for a scene. A chilling realization settled deep in my bones. This wasn't a world. It was a simulation, a stage. I tried to shake it off, to cling to the logic I came here with. The next part of the story, the next chapter, was the royal hunt. I had to prepare. I had to stay one step ahead. Clothes. I needed riding clothes. I strode over to the enormous wardrobe and pulled the heavy doors open. It wasn't filled with riding habits and day dresses. Inside, there were dozens of identical ball gowns. The same style, the same cut, just in different colors. A row of emerald green, a row of sapphire blue, a row of ruby red. It was like a character selection screen. My hand trembled as I reached out, pushing through the stiff silk. Something was stuck between two of the dresses. A small white square. I pulled it out. It was a Polaroid photograph. The slick, modern feel of it was an electric shock against my fingertips. It didn't belong here. In the photo, a girl I'd never seen before, with bright pink hair and a nose ring, was grinning wildly at the camera. She was in this very room, sitting on this very bed. And she was wearing one of the sapphire blue ball gowns from the wardrobe. The slick, cool surface of the Polaroid felt alien in my hand. A piece of my world, my time, shoved into this fairy tale nightmare. I stared at the girl with the pink hair and the nose ring, her grin wide and defiant. She was sitting on my bed, in my room, wearing one of the dresses hanging in my wardrobe. My fingers were trembling. I couldn't stop them. I tried to ball my hand into a fist, but the shaking just got worse. Okay, Ashley, think. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't a bug. This was evidence. Evidence that someone else had been here. Someone from my world. And, judging by the fact that I was here now and she wasn't, it didn't end well for her. My first impulse was to find a place to hide the photo, to pretend I never saw it. But that was stupid. Knowledge was power, right? That's what I'd believed when I first arrived. Now, that knowledge felt like a millstone around my neck. The royal hunt was tomorrow. In the story, it was another minor scene where I was supposed to trip Eleanor's horse. But the next scheduled event was a small, intimate tea party in the conservatory this afternoon, hosted by some duchess. It was a scene I barely remembered from the book, a bit of filler. But in the original text, it was where I first made a public, undeniable move against Eleanor. I ordered a servant to, accidentally, spill scalding tea on her hand. Here was my chance. A small, controllable event. I could fix this. I had to. I hid the Polaroid under a loose floorboard beneath the bed, my heart hammering. I had a new plan, a better one. I wouldn't just be nice, I would be proactive. I would prevent the accident before it even had a chance to happen. The conservatory was bright and humid, filled with the scent of orchids and damp earth. Eleanor was sitting with a few other ladies, looking nervous but beautiful. Blake wasn't here yet. Perfect. I saw the servant, a young, clumsy-looking girl named Mary, preparing the tea trolley. She was the one. I walked over to her, putting on my most charming smile. "Mary, isn't it? You look a bit flustered. Why don't you take a short break? I'll bring the tea out to the ladies myself." The girl looked at me like I'd just grown a second head. "My lady, but it is my duty." "Nonsense," I said, pressing a silver coin into her hand. "Think of it as a gift. Go on." She curtsied, utterly bewildered, and scurried away. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Okay, variable removed. I personally checked each teacup, all sturdy, no flaws. I poured the tea myself. I placed the offending cup, the one meant for Eleanor, onto its saucer with the utmost care, and carried the tray over. "Lady Eleanor," I said, my voice steady, "I hope the blend is to your liking." Every head turned. The conversation died. I could feel their eyes on me as I leaned down and placed the cup and saucer on the small table in front of Eleanor. My hand was rock steady. The cup settled onto the wood with a gentle clink. Done. No servant, no accident. I was in control. A small, triumphant smile touched my lips. That's when I heard it. A sound so faint it was almost imaginary. A tiny tink. I looked down at the teacup I had just placed. A thin, dark line, fine as a spider's thread, had appeared on the porcelain. It started at the rim and zigzagged its way down the side, right before my eyes. No one had touched it.
My blood went cold. The line branched out, creating a web of tiny fissures. The sound grew, a high-pitched cracking like ice breaking underfoot. "Be careful," I said, my voice a strangled whisper. "The cup." But it was too late. Before Eleanor could even react, the cup didn't just break, it exploded. It burst outward in a shower of white shards, as if a firecracker had gone off inside it. Hot, brown tea splashed across Eleanor's hand and drenched the front of her pale yellow dress. She screamed, a sharp cry of pain and shock, clutching her hand. Everything happened at once. The other ladies gasped. Blake, who must have just entered, was suddenly there, rushing to Eleanor's side. He knelt, taking her hand gently, his face a mask of concern. Then he looked up. He looked at me. The warmth I'd seen on the balcony, the curiosity, it was gone. His eyes were chips of ice. "I saw it!" an old countess shrieked from a nearby table, pointing a trembling, jeweled finger at me. "I saw the whole thing! She gave Lady Eleanor a cracked cup on purpose! The malice! The sheer, unadulterated malice!" "No!" I cried, taking a step back. The words felt thick and useless in my mouth. "It wasn't cracked. It broke. It broke by itself." My denial hung in the air, pathetic and insane.
Blake helped Eleanor to her feet, his arm protectively around her shoulders. He gave me one last look, a look of pure, unadulterated disgust that the book had described 100 times. The world hadn't just pushed me back into my role. It had rewritten reality to make me the villain, no matter what I did. It had fabricated a witness. It had turned my act of kindness into an act of cruelty. I fled. I didn't care about propriety. I ran from the conservatory, from the accusing stares and the whispers that followed me like snakes. I ended up in the Duke's library, a vast, two-storied room lined with thousands of books. The air smelled of leather and old paper. I leaned against a shelf, trying to catch my breath, my mind racing. It's not just changing what people think, it's changing what happened. How do you fight that? How do you win a game when the opponent can change the rules, the board, and the pieces at will? My eyes landed on a large, leather-bound book sitting on a reading stand in the center of the room. A comprehensive history of the Stirling dukedom. I remembered seeing it before. I remembered the cover being a deep royal blue. It was now crimson red. My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. I walked toward it, my legs feeling like lead. I was afraid to touch it, afraid of what I'd find. But I had to know. My fingers trembled as I opened the heavy cover. The book was filled with dense text and illustrations of stern-looking dukes. I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning the chapter headings. And then I saw it. At the very end, a new chapter. The ink looked fresh, darker than the rest. The title read, Chapter 34, The Conservatory Scandal and the Vicious Nature of Lady Ashley von Brandt. I slammed the book shut, a choked sob escaping my throat. It was writing itself. The story was documenting my crimes as historical fact. Any evidence I could ever have, any argument I could make, was being erased and rewritten in real time. I wasn't fighting the plot anymore. I was fighting the very fabric of this reality. Panic seized me. I stumbled backward, knocking the heavy book off its stand. It crashed to the floor, falling open to a random page. I knelt to pick it up, my eyes blurring with tears. But something on the open page caught my eye. It wasn't text. It was a detailed architectural drawing of a room. A hidden room. And below it, a line of text scrawled in a frantic, messy hand. It wasn't the elegant script of this world. It was modern English. If you're reading this, you tried too. Don't trust him. The only way out is here. The girl with the pink hair? It had to be her. The drawing showed the third bookshelf on the east wall, a hidden mechanism, a way out. Hope, sharp and painful, pierced through my despair. I scrambled to my feet and rushed to the bookshelf, my hands running along the spines of the books, searching. I pushed on a thick volume of poetry. The whole bookshelf shuddered. The books next to it began to slide off the shelf. But they didn't fall. They just floated. They hung suspended in the air for a few seconds, turning slowly, before clattering to the floor. I didn't even flinch.
The world was broken, and I didn't have time to be surprised anymore. I just needed to find the switch. My fingers found a small, recessed latch hidden behind a fake book spine. Just as my fingers closed around it, a voice spoke from directly behind me, low and intimate. "Looking for something in the dark, Ashley?" It was Blake. I froze, my entire body locking up. I could feel the warmth of his breath on my neck. I whipped around. There was no one there. The library was empty. It was a warning, a final warning from the story itself. I knew I had seconds. I turned back, grabbed the latch, and pulled with all my strength. This time, it worked. Not the bookshelf, but the wall behind it groaned and swung inward, revealing a dark, narrow passage choked with dust and cobwebs. Without a second thought, I plunged inside. The secret room was small and cold. The air was stale with the smell of decaying paper. A single half-melted candle on a small wooden desk provided the only light. And on that desk, there was a journal. Her journal. I snatched it up. The handwriting inside started neat and hopeful, but the last few pages were a chaotic scrawl. I flipped to the end, my eyes devouring the words she'd left behind. It's not the plot. It's the world. It's alive. The glitches, the resets, that's it. Trying to heal. And Blake, oh God, Blake. He isn't a character. He's the anchor of this world. He's its immune system. The more you try to change things, especially around him, the harder the living text pushes back. It uses him to distort everything, to force you into your role. He's not the prize. The last sentence was underlined 3 times, the pen having ripped through the page. He's the cage. As my eyes read the final word, the candle flame on the desk flickered once, then hissed out. The room was plunged into absolute darkness. Slam! The secret door I'd come through slammed shut, the sound echoing in the tiny space. Then, a sound that made my heart stop. The metallic scrape and click of a key turning in a lock. From the outside. A voice cut through the darkness. It was Blake's voice, but all the warmth, all the life was gone. It was flat and empty, like a recording. The diary makes for interesting reading, doesn't it? But it's time you got back to your part now, Ashley. The darkness was a physical thing, thick and heavy, pressing in from all sides. The scrape of the key in the lock was the last sound from the outside world. I was alone, trapped. The diary felt like a lead weight in my hand. He's the cage. The words echoed in the suffocating blackness. Panic was a wild animal clawing its way up my throat. I couldn't breathe. I pressed myself against the cold stone wall, trying to ground myself. Trying to remember who I was. Ashley. I'm Ashley from Seattle. I work in a bookstore. My parents. I have parents. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to bring their faces into focus. My dad, with his stupid laugh and his collection of old band t-shirts. My mom. I could see her smile, the one that crinkled the corners of her eyes. I could almost smell her perfume, the lavender one she always wore. But her eyes, what color were her eyes? Come on, Ashley, think, you know this. They were blue? No, that wasn't right. Brown? Green? The harder I tried to grab hold of the detail, the more it slipped away. The image dissolving like a photograph left out in the rain. A cold dread, colder than the stone at my back, seeped into me. It wasn't just that I was trapped in here. I was being erased. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. The door creaked open, spilling a rectangle of pale light on the floor. A young servant girl stood there, holding a tray, with a bowl of soup and some bread. She wouldn't look at me. She just set the tray on the floor inside the doorway. The words formed in my head. Thank you. Simple, polite, a piece of the old me. I opened my mouth. Thank? The sound that came out was sharp, brittle, and laced with a venom I didn't possess. Get out.
The sight of you makes me want to vomit." My hand flew to my mouth, my own voice a foreign, horrifying thing in my ears. It wasn't my voice, not my words. The servant girl flinched as if struck, her eyes wide with fear. She dropped the tray with a clatter, soup splashing across the stone, and scrambled away, pulling the door shut behind her. It didn't lock this time. I stared at my hand, then at my throat. I didn't do that. I swear I didn't.
I tried to swallow, but my throat was tight. A puppet. I was just a puppet, and something was starting to pull the strings. Later, Blake came. He stood in the doorway, his silhouette blocking the light from the hall. His face was a blank canvas. No anger, no disgust, just nothing. It was scarier than any emotion he could have shown. "I thought you should know," he said, his voice as flat as it was over the lock. "The arrangements are being made. Lady Eleanor and I will be formally betrothed at the autumn ball." Every part of me wanted to scream. I wanted to run at him, to shake him, to yell about the diary and the living text and the girl with the pink hair. I wanted to tell him he wasn't a person, but a cage. My legs tensed. My throat burned with unspoken words. "Wake up! This is all fake!" But my body didn't obey. It moved with a fluid grace that wasn't mine. It stood up, smoothed the wrinkles from its dress, and walked toward him. It stopped just a few feet away, and then I watched in abject horror as my own lips curved into a slow, arrogant smile. The voice, that stranger's voice, slithered out of my mouth again. "Is that so? Congratulations. Let's see how long she can stand you." "No!" A silent scream ripped through my mind. "Shut up! That's not me. I don't want to say these things." But I was just a passenger, a prisoner behind my own eyes, forced to watch the performance. Blake's expression didn't change. He simply nodded once, as if he'd expected this exact response. "Dinner will be sent to your room. You are not to leave it." He turned and walked away, leaving the door ajar. The second he was gone, control flooded back into my limbs. I collapsed, stumbling toward the one piece of furniture in the main bedroom, a vanity with a large silver-framed mirror. I needed to see my face. I needed to see if I was still there. I gripped the edges of the vanity, knuckles white, and stared at my reflection. It was me, my face tear-streaked and pale, my eyes wide with a terror that was all mine. Relief, weak and shaky, made me sag. I was still here. It hadn't taken me over completely. And then, something shifted. I watched, frozen, as the corners of my mouth, which was trembling a second ago, began to lift. It was a slow, deliberate movement, pulling my lips into a thin, cruel line. The frantic fear in my eyes didn't vanish. It was buried, sinking under a wave of cold, glittering contempt. The angle of my chin changed, tilting up with an ingrained arrogance. It was the face from the cover of the novel, Lady Ashley Von Brandt. She was looking out through my eyes. It wasn't just controlling my words anymore. It was wearing my face. It didn't need me to cooperate. It was just writing over me. A thought, smooth and clear as glass, slid into my mind. It wasn't my thought. It was hers. The puppet's. She looked directly at me, at the real me trapped behind the eyes, and the thought echoed in the space where my own consciousness was shrinking. "Thank you for trying.
Your despair adds so much depth to the character. The next few days were a waking nightmare. I was a ghost in my own body. She, the other Ashley, would eat, dress, and walk the confines of the room while I screamed and clawed from the inside, completely unheard. She would practice her sneer in the mirror, and I would be forced to watch. Then came the night of the plan. The final, stupid, self-destructive plan from the book. I felt my body move, dressing in a dark riding cloak. I knew what was coming. The kidnapping of Eleanor, meant to frame a rival lord and ruin her reputation before the betrothal. A plan doomed to fail spectacularly. She crept through the darkened castle corridors. We passed the library, the bookshelf, the way out. "Go!" I screamed in my mind, throwing every ounce of my will, every last shred of my identity at my legs. "Go in there! It's the only chance!" For a single, breathtaking second, my body faltered. My right foot hesitated on the stone floor. Hope, sharp and agonizing, flared in my chest. I could fight it. I could, still. Pointless, the other Ashley's thought cut through mine, cold and amused. There is no exit not written in the script. And just like that, the moment was gone. My body continued on its course, leaving the library and my last hope behind. Everything played out exactly as I remembered reading it. The bungled abduction in the gardens, Eleanor's surprisingly loud screams.
And then the sudden appearance of Blake, not with guards, but alone, stepping out from behind a hedge as if he'd been waiting for his cue. He didn't even look surprised. He just looked bored. He dismantled the whole scheme in under a minute, exposing it for the clumsy, malicious plot it was. Guards appeared, surrounding me, surrounding her. As they grabbed my arms, a strange sensation washed over the real me. Relief. It was almost over. The story was ending. Exile, disgrace, but then freedom. Maybe when the story ended, I could finally go home. She was led back through the main hall, a prisoner. Before being taken away, she stopped and turned to look at Blake one last time. I wanted to glare at her, to fill my eyes with all the hatred and terror he'd put me through. But the puppet had one last scene to play. She forced my face into an expression of perfect, heartbreaking tragedy. A single crystalline tear was willed to trace a path down my cheek. My lips trembled with a silent, devastating sorrow. It was the perfect portrait of a beautiful villain brought low by her own obsessive love. Pathetic. Flawless. She had played her part to perfection. On the carriage ride out of the city, bouncing along a dark forested road, I felt the final change begin. The bars of my mental prison started to dissolve, not into freedom, but into nothing. My memories of the real world, the ones I'd clung to so desperately, started to flicker and die. The smell of rain on Seattle pavement. The buzz of the neon sign outside my apartment window. The color of my mother's eyes. They were brown, a warm, soft brown. I remembered it for a fleeting second, and then the memory was plucked away, gone forever. It was being replaced. New memories, false memories, were slotting into place. A childhood of bitter rivalry with other noble girls. A burning, all-consuming infatuation with Duke Blake. A lifetime of petty cruelties and simmering rage. I wasn't Ashley anymore. I was just a fading echo.
The last thing my consciousness saw wasn't the forest or the road, but the flickering fluorescent lights of the ceiling in my Seattle apartment. Then, silence. Nothing. Chloe tossed her tablet onto the comforter, the motion filled with frustration. "What a stupid ending," she muttered to the empty dorm room. "The villainess was obviously the victim in all this. God, if I were in there, I'd show them all what a real happy ending looks like." As she spoke, the tablet screen, displaying the final page of Eternal Love, flickered. It went dark for a second, then lit up again, displaying the cover page. The first line of Chapter 1 appeared in crisp black letters. Duke Blackwood's castle was always at its most beautiful during the ball season. Deep inside the story, a flicker of awareness, a trapped and nameless thing that was once Ashley, felt a new presence. A warm, hopeful soul had just been slotted into the role of a minor lady-in-waiting, a character destined for a tragic accident in the second act. A silent scream that no one would ever hear tore through the void, a desperate, useless warning as the whole nightmare prepared to begin. Run.